Welcome back to Epic Agents, the Best in Real Estate podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Hamm, and joining me today is Britt Geiman. She's a realtor broker, a team owner, and an investor serving markets in Sarasota, Florida, and Wilmington, North Carolina. Britt is a member of the Real Producers Top 500 list, and she was also voted Top 12 Real Estate Brokers in Sarasota for 2024. Britt, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Great to have you. I've been really looking forward to having someone like you who's successful in the Sarasota market join the platform. Sarasota was recently, and I forget the exact ranking, but U.S. News and World Report ranks Sarasota so high every year in the top places to live, the fastest growing markets, and always top 10 beaches, either Siesta Key or Longboat Key. They're always in there, right?
Yes.
So it's a tremendous market, I'm sure, and we're going to dive a little bit more into that in a minute. But Britt, before we do that, if you could share just a little bit of your background, hometown, education, and what inspired you to get into this crazy business?
Yeah, so I am originally from Cincinnati, Ohio. I moved to Sarasota 10 years ago this year, so I've been here for quite a while. My background's in marketing. I started in real estate, more on the investing side, with a few long-term LTR properties. And then that's kind of how I shifted into sales. I've always had a passion for real estate. I always thought it was very interesting and I thought it'd be cool, but I had never done sales. I'd never sold a thing in a day in my life. And so I kind of started this venture of getting my license and had zero confidence. Who's going to hire me to sell their house or help them buy a house? And then within 6 months of getting my license, I sold a $2.6 million condo on an organic lead. So then I realized, okay, I have a career here. I'm passionate about it. And just over time, that really has evolved and kind of grown into something really large scale. And, I love what I do. I don't feel like I'm working a day in my life.
I love it. When did you start on the sales side?
I got licensed in December of 2020. I really didn't start selling until the spring of 21, which, if you remember, is right when COVID was just starting. And so then here I am this is a terrible time, because at that time, everyone thought the market was going to crash. And all the builders here started letting go of their sales agents, really kind of starting to downsize. There was a lot of panic, and then all of a sudden it just shot off. And so, and then we had our crazy COVID frenzy.
Yeah, frenzy for sure. Yeah, it's a crazy time, definitely, to get into the industry. That $2.6 million listing, you mentioned that you connected with that via an organic lead. What kind of lead was that?
I did. So it was part of my sphere, and it was their parents. And so, really we started looking, we actually started looking for the family, the people that I knew. And we have been looking at equestrian properties, and that just kind of didn't pan out. And then it turned into, maybe my parents could purchase something here. So we really started loosely chatting, and then it turned into, I started sending some $300,000 condos, just thinking, okay, second home. And it was just no. And I knew it didn't fit, a little bit more of an artsy, eclectic, higher end clients that these are. And so I'm no, this isn't it. So then I'm you know what, just send them this one. And we started with $1 million, then it went up to $1.5 million. And this was a condo building that had not been constructed yet. So I got to be a part of building from the ground up a 12-unit boutique condo building called The Collection in downtown Sarasota. So we went under contract, spent about 2 years building it, and now I actually have that condo relisted now for $3.895 million.
Wow. Yeah. What a difference just a couple of years makes, right? Just a vertical market. Sarasota is such a cool place. I went to college in Florida and spent some time in Sarasota. I had a friend in college that was from Sarasota and would visit quite a lot, and have loved it ever since. That was a long time ago. I'm sure it's even a lot has changed since then, but a great city. And you also work in the Wilmington, North Carolina market, if I'm not mistaken. And that was actually something that I didn't notice when we first connected. And that's a town, I'm based in the Charlotte area, and Wilmington is another area of the country that I really like a lot. My wife and I have started visiting Wilmington in the last 18 months or so. We sort of discovered it for ourselves, and the Curry Beach and Carolina Beach and and downtown Wilmington is such a cool place. How did you begin working in that market as well?
Right. So we just launched. So our team there is selling the Carolina coast. We'll be with Keller Williams there as well. And so that's, our market here, and I'm sure we'll dive into that a little bit here in a second, but Florida, we're one of the fastest growing markets, one of the fastest growing states. However, getting back to the basics of real estate, it's just basic economics, right? Simple supply and demand. And so right now our supply, we have a surplus of inventory, which is, the demand is not meeting it. So then it's driving down prices and, obviously how that fluctuates. And, we are in a fluctuating market right now. There's no doubt about that. We've been in one for about a year and a half. So when we're looking at, analyzing our business here and the trends, in my hyper-local market, I really sell a lot in Lakewood Ranch. We're the #1 master plan community in the entire country. In my hyper-local market, we have about 9 months of inventory, and our average days on market's about 96. So, when you own a business and you're an entrepreneur and you have to sit there and you have to look at everything from like a 30,000 foot view down and really kind of start analyzing, okay, where am I going? What is my direction? And I truly believe like in times like this where we're slower is your time of growth, right? And laying the foundation, because real estate historically, as we look back, it's always been this up and down, and so when we have high markets, we're going to go low and we're going to go back high again at some point. So it kind of evolved into expanding into a new market. Wilmington is very similar to Sarasota in a lot of aspects, right? And I see the growth. I see the growth in Wilmington. If you look historically over the last 5 or 10 years, I can kind of project and see where that's going over the next 5 or 10. I follow a lot of trends of airports. So generally speaking, if you're following the trends of where direct flights are, where they're starting to announce, direct flights in and out of. And so Sarasota Airport's expanding. I think it's a $500 million expansion that's going on, and they're adding a lot of gates and terminals and things like that. But we're looking at all the carriers that are bringing direct flights here. And also Tampa is a really large international airport. We have Orlando within an hour and a half as well. So when you kind of look at all this, and you look at the statistics, a lot of direct flights are being brought directly from Sarasota, Tampa, Orlando. They just added Lakeland direct to Wilmington. Tampa is a huge feeder market to Wilmington, North Carolina. And so again, it's really just a numbers and a projection and it's just a business move. And I love the area. It's a very cute town and it's very similar to Sarasota.
Yeah, I would agree. It is very similar, the vibe. And it is a cool town. And the coastline, Carolina coastline is really beautiful. It's different from the Gulf Coast.
It's different. It's very laid back. I love that North Carolina and the coast there. It's very laid back. Not to say that Sarasota's not, but we have a little bit more of a pretentious higher end vibe here than that laid back Carolina style, which I love. That'll be nice to kind of have that, break difference in demographics. And so, we're excited. We're ready to hit the ground running. But yeah, so you have to stay tuned.
That's really exciting. Yeah. So tracking who's opening up direct flights where, that's an interesting tactic as far as, noticing where growth trends are happening. That's really cool. That's new for me. So I love that.
Yeah, it's something, and I love to travel. So that could be just me mixing in a little bit of my love for traveling and flying. And, but I've been doing that for years. If you look again, Sarasota just brought from upstate New York, New Hampshire. When you look at these things, Des Moines, Iowa is another direct flight they just added. So when we look at that, it's like, okay, well, these are our feeder markets. So it makes sense that they're doing this. And then you kind of look at outbound flights and because when we're looking at the bigger picture scale, we do a lot of referral business, right? So really then it's connecting with agents in these feeder markets for a referral business and, trying to market on social media because they do it. My whole business really is built off social media. And so then targeting those audiences in those regions when we're running campaign ads on Facebook and Instagram and those kinds of things.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I think that's a really interesting way of determining who your feeder markets are and is one tactic for sure, but I think that's really cool. I'm going to actually apply that to my overall strategy. Yeah. That's a great tip. You mentioned also in the now that, in the last year to year and a half, Sarasota, and I think Florida in general, might be experiencing a little bit more of a supply-demand shift. And you identified it as a time for growth, which reminds me a lot of the highly successful brokers that have joined this podcast, and a lot of highly successful brokers I know that haven't been on this podcast yet, began their career right after the mortgage crash. And, they were getting into the residential real estate sales market and industry in 2010, 2011, 2012, and grew tremendous businesses. So I love that you kind of spotted that as like, not necessarily, of course, some care and some, there's always some worry that goes along with that, but it's also, how do you utilize some of the downtime that you've experienced in a somewhat slower market. But I think every market's slower compared to 2021, right? There's every market's slower than that. So it was an interesting time, definitely, to start your sales career.
It is.
And you began investing when?
What year was that? 2017.
Okay.
Yeah, right before, a couple years before COVID, thankfully, because that's changed drastically, and that went from, and that's, when we get into really like how I started following all the Facebook group, like Bigger Pockets. I think that was one of my first thing that I started following and really diving into in their podcast now. And then it turned into like, okay, how can I make residual income off of assets and investments? And then it went from one, and then it went from leveraging that one to then buying a second and then buying a third. And so, and I love having those conversations with people. So really like my foundation started off that mindset of kind of turning and burning, continuously trying to make money and residual income and cash flow. And, again, I love educating people on that. And especially like with the VA loan, a lot of, people in the military members don't realize that you can, leverage your VA loan and you can split it. So again, having just some conversations like that, I enjoy that part of it. A lot of my clientele is investors. So, it's fun, it's interesting, it keeps you on your toes. But that's how I started. And then when I got into sales, I kind of pivoted, and then it was COVID. And so back to kind of building that foundation when the market is slower. If you think of COVID, any new agent that tried to jump in the market then, and the consensus was that everybody was making a ton of money. And some of us were, and that was great, but also we were losing a lot of money or losing a lot of clients, or some weren't doing well at all because they didn't have a foundation. So I jumped in, and I'm still sort of flying by the seat of my pants. I think that's just entrepreneurship in general. But that was a time where when you were brand new, you didn't know how to use your CRM, you didn't know how to do anything, you didn't prospect, you didn't know how to write a contract. Think about it. When you get your license, you're kind of thrown to the wolves. You don't have support. And it was so much frenzy and crazy time that like even your broker or people in your office, everyone was just fending for themselves, it felt like. So not having that foundation, it hurt my business a lot. I was very successful, but also the ones that really had that foundation and had the systems in place really excelled and did well. So then if you look back, it's kind of that same principle now, that just taking the time to really build your systems and foundation now, that way when we have the next, vertical, we can really capitalize on it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Build that runway, right? Yeah. Before you take off, make sure you build that platform, that basis for a successful business. Not like most small business owners and entrepreneurs and real estate brokers who kind of build the airplane while they're going down the runway, So.
There will always be some of that. There will.
Yeah.
You have to, I have these conversations daily that if you're not pivoting in this market, you're going to die off. And it's just an unfortunate, fact of the matter. So I think a lot of agents right now are trying to pivot, trying to figure out their next move, switching brokerages. I don't ever think that's like the necessary, the grass isn't always greener, but it's really like diving deep and I think getting intentional in your business and really building a brand and brand awareness.
I agree. I think it's also important for a new broker to have a great idea of, and really when you start any business, you should really know who it is, who the customer is, who the client is that you intend to serve. Mm-hmm. And then take some time to find the brokerage that can best align with who that is. So whether it's first time buyers, downsizers, relocation, or luxury properties. That's something that I've learned in this short time that I've been on the sales side of residential real estate. And so that's kind of what came to mind when you brought that up, that, as part of your business plan, you want to align with a brokerage that's going to align with that business plan.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, even just for new agents and, podcasts or books or things that they could kind of look into. I remember going back to when I was new, and I'm still new, right? I'm still within 5 years of the business, but I think that you can dive into all of the training that you want and read all the material. But if you don't have a clearly identified plan or brand awareness or niche that you want to go into, you're just almost spinning your tires, right? And so, for example, my first year, I was like, I'm going to learn everything that I can possibly learn. I'm going to do all the certifications and designations. I think I got 10 in my first year. I had over 180 hours of CE credit, and the minimum's like 14. So, now after doing my broker and getting licensed in North Carolina, I have my GRI. I have a few other things now. I have over 500 hours of formal training and education now in real estate. But if you're not getting intentional, right? And so in the beginning, I think we were all just grasping at straws. So now I've clearly identified my brand as luxury. And so now I target the things that help me excel in that space, right? So, there's great material out there for new agents. I'm a KW girl, obviously. So the MRE, there's the 12-week year, I think is a great book. I've seen Mel Robbins live at a conference in February, and she was phenomenal. And so then I went and purchased her 5-second rule book. I thought that was incredible. But again, you can read all the material in the world and listen to all the advice. But if you're not getting intentional about your brand and having a brand awareness, because it is real estate, we are a brand, we are ourselves, and ourselves is our brand. So you have to get really intentional.
It's important too, to once you decide on that, to stick with it, isn't it? I see a lot of, and I've made this mistake in my journey of self-employment. I wouldn't even call it entrepreneurship, because it's, I've never really owned a business. The business has always owned me. So, but knowing that, whether it's planning on who you intend to serve or your marketing strategies. You mentioned, and that actually is a great segue into another topic I want to talk to you about, was your marketing. That's actually how you came on my radar initially. And I think that marketing strategies, once you select one, because there are 1,000 ways to market your business and they all work, but only the ones that you stick with, right? You have to stick with one. So tell me a little bit about, or share with listeners a little bit about your marketing strategy.
So my business is built off social media. My pretty much, other than my sphere, my book of business has come from Facebook. And I'm on all the groups, and I'm sure a lot of us agents are, right? The moms groups, or the local moving, relocation, all the moving, California, North Carolina, New York to Florida, whatever that is. I knew early on that was going to be my thing, right? So I've never cold called. I've never door knocked. That's not my thing. Could I try it? Sure. But I'm just not my thing. So again, getting intentional and leaning into kind of what you're naturally pulled to do. So mine is just social media. I love to say this, but my screen time on my phone, it's like 14 hours a day. It's kind of ridiculous, but I'm prospecting all day long, because I'm on there, I'm talking to people, I'm commenting, and I've been obviously in a few years now that people, when they see me comment, it's like, okay, we've seen her comment now 80 times on, different groups. We're going to reach out to her now. And so I don't know that it's always, and I'm starting to get more people in my community tag me, or clients, and it just kind of builds off that. But and it's not always necessarily the person that might post like, hey, I'm looking for a realtor in Sarasota, da 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 da. But it's that consistency. If you stay consistent in commenting and posting and tagging and providing value, it's the other people that are watching typically that will then reach out and say, hey, I've been sitting on this for a year. I'm ready to move now. I've seen you show up for the last year and provide consistent value. I'm ready to list my house now, So again, my avenue has been Facebook. I'm starting to dive into the Instagram and the video content creation, and that's kind of where my next move as a business is going. But really, for the last couple of years, it's been the Facebook, and then running the sponsored ads, and it's just staying consistent. But we're in such a society that wants instant gratification. And that is the hard part that you have to understand. If you're going to go that social media route, you have to be fast and you have to be on it. So the second that someone's posting, you're commenting, you're already in their DMs with like a pre-made template or some sort of attention grabbing draw that states clearly who you are, what you're trying to provide them, and then capture that conversation and convert it into, let's have a Zoom or a phone call, or let's set something up.
Couple takeaways there. Consistency was one of them. Mm-hmm. Staying consistent, committing to a certain strategy, and staying consistent. The other one that really stood out to me, the other point you made, was bringing value to the conversation. So not necessarily posting a lot, but chiming in when you see questions and providing a comment or a response to that post that brings value. And then over time and consistency, it takes, as you said, it takes a lot of time and commitment to continue to show up in these conversations, to grow that recognition and awareness. And I think, to me, Facebook groups are a tremendous way to spread your brand awareness and your to show your expertise. And also, I love too that you mentioned running Facebook ads. Facebook advertising is still the best value in digital marketing. Yeah, in my opinion.
I agree. They've changed things obviously over the years. It's evolved. It used to be, I think, a little easier and got a little bit more value out of it. It's certainly different now, but it's still, it's the easiest way to get your point across the fastest, right? And it's not to say that I don't do print marketing, because I do that, and I do mailers. And I'm intentional with some things. I don't put all my eggs in one basket, but by far have seen a significantly better ROI coming from Facebook and social media than any other form of marketing that I've done.
I love it. Yeah, I've actually seen the same in my own marketing, that when it comes to growing my email list and spreading awareness for videos on YouTube and that sort of thing, and blog posts, running ads on Facebook has had the best return for me, the best value. So yeah, I couldn't agree more there. Bigger Pockets podcast I'll have to check out. You mentioned the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, and that of course you're Keller Williams girl, as you said, and Gary Keller, that's one of the seminal books in the industry that I think, regardless of whether you're with Keller Williams or another brokerage, every realtor should read that book, especially in the beginning of their career. What are some other resources? You also mentioned Mel Robbins, who is mentioned a lot. I produce several other podcasts and have conversations with a lot of entrepreneurs and nonprofit leaders in all kinds of different categories. And Mel Robbins is brought up quite a bit in those conversations. What are some other resources that you would recommend for brokers? Yeah, so if it's okay, I want to double back on Mel Robbins. I had the opportunity to see her. I went to Keller Williams family reunion, which was in Vegas in this past February, and Tony Robbins and Mel Robbins was there. And it was just having both of them at the same conference and having the ability to hear them speak live. So I would say both of them, if you're not following them, at least on social media, you probably should. Very inspirational, two different avenues, right? Tony's more pump you up, get you to go out and sell. Mel's more of a whole picture view on your life and really reflecting and being grateful and gratitude. And I've read, I've done the 12-week year. I think that was a phenomenal book, instrumental just in getting me back to the basics and breaking a year-long, 12 months down into weekly and quarterly goals versus, I need to sell X by the end of the year. And then, because as we just kind of get lost a little bit, right? And so then, it's already August. I can't believe it's already August, right? And so we only have a few months left of the selling year. And so if you're not, I think taking that big picture view and breaking it down into smaller, digestible goals and, that way you don't
okay, well, I have 3 more months to sell, whatever your goal is, $2 million more or whatever it is, but breaking it down quarterly and weekly and, kind of going from there. So I think that book was really helpful for that. I started that with a book club with a few other women. I really think, though, going back to, like I said, you can read all the resources. And before I start promoting all these like really phenomenal authors and podcast, people, I really think that you have to get intentional with your business first and decide where you want your niche to be, whether that's, the military first responder community, the luxury market, first-time home buyers, second home vacation rentals. There's so many different ways that you can break off into real estate. And same thing with your target area. I see a lot of agents that try to cover like a 2-hour radius, or they'll even go over, here I am on the coast, but they'll go over and try to sell something over in Orlando or down in Naples. And it's not to say that we can't sell right all over the state. I think you're doing your clientele possibly a disservice, right? If you don't truly know those areas or have someone with boots on the ground that's going in on it with you. But really like getting your niche market, right? So my niche market is, like I said, Lakewood Ranch, this master plan community. I know it like the back of my hand. You can ask me, a buyer, a seller can ask me anything, and I can tell you every single detail, CDD fee, HOA fee, all the future developments coming up. And so really it's just getting intentional with learning about your hyper-local market. So I think for a new agent, that's way more crucial than reading any book or podcast. I think they're great for getting you motivated and pumped up to sell and keeping that momentum going. But I think really identifying your brand and then diving into like your hyper-local market knowledge.
And taking action.
Yeah.
That's really the takeaway I get from there. And you mentioned being intentional in who you're going to serve and your marketing strategies. I think that we as real estate brokers, mm-hmm. as entrepreneurs and business owners can kind of get into a self-sabotaging mm-hmm. routine without even knowing it. I think that consuming too much, too many resources mm-hmm. and business advice and mm-hmm. strategy advice and all that stuff, books and podcasts, I think has a way of tricking our mind into thinking that we're actually accomplishing something when really we're just getting stuck. And so I agree with you. I used to be one of those, book a week guys, but I'm not anymore. I've got my small list that I go back to time and time again. And I think that's really great advice. You kind of have to, I've said in another podcast too, and I did the same thing with this production. I don't wait for it to be perfect. Mm-hmm. I get to about 80% and then I launch, and then you'll kind of dial in the rest as you go, but you just can't wait for everything to align and for your strategy to be perfect.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think a lot of us agents, especially mega agents or team owners, have to get over that perfectionism and that need for control. And so I think a lot of it is letting go a little bit of that control. And then, it's because it's never going to be perfect, right? When you're in sales in general or business, or you're there's always a risk. But I think just getting it to where you can, again, like you said, launch it. And then we're just constantly evolving as you go, because the market's changing, the demographics are changing, just everything changes constantly. And so you have to almost be, like I said, willing to pivot and change with it. But it's letting go of that perfectionism and that control, which is really hard to do for a lot of us agents, but it's crucial to our business for sure.
It is. I think it's not unique to this industry, but it's very common in this mm-hmm. industry that we have that we all kind of struggle with the ability to let go, and especially mm-hmm. to delegate. And mm-hmm. The other thing about consuming too much content is that shiny object syndrome, where, and that goes back to what I mentioned earlier about marketing, and my personal belief that of the 1,000 ways that you can market a business, mm-hmm. every one of those ways is effective, mm-hmm. but what's not effective is doing a little bit here for a month, a little bit there for a month. Yeah. And that's that shiny object syndrome, right? We try something and it's not effective within a few weeks. And to your point, we want instant gratification.
Absolutely.
All excellent points. I really appreciate that. I'm going to have obviously a link to the Millionaire Real Estate Agent in the description for this episode, and also links to Mel Robbins as well. Britt, I really appreciate your time. I know how extremely busy you are, and you have if I'm not mistaken, you have a hurricane or a tropical storm bearing down on you right now. How's the weather in Sarasota?
We caught the brunt of it last night. Woke up this morning, you can probably see on my social media feeling very sad for my local community here. When you lived on the coastline for so long, these storms really become like no big deal to us, right? Versus our clients that have just moved here and they're freaking out, and we're trying to prepare them for what's to come. That it's really the aftermath that people really don't think about. It's like, okay, the storm's gone. Well, now we have to deal with all the flooding. Almost all of Sarasota is completely underwater right now. And so I have a lot of friends that their homes have 6 inches of water in them. Their cars are completely, ruined in their driveway.
Oh my gosh.
People are going down their streets in canoes and kayaks to see their neighbors and see who needs help. So even though it wasn't like we had Ian a few years ago that was supposed to land as a Category 5 direct for Sarasota, landed as a 4 in Fort Myers. That was a really big storm for us, and many, many, many months of cleanup for that. So this, is just a tropical storm, but really it's the flooding that really, really kind of destroys the city. And so we'll spend the next few weeks and months clean up with all that. It's, it's pretty bad. I'm inland, so, I'm okay. My street's flooded, but, I, again, can't complain, but it's sombersome waking up this morning and seeing a lot of your friends and clients and colleagues with their houses completely underwater, and a lot of their stuff is gone,
Yeah, it's a major rain event and it's not over yet. It's coming up the coast, and coastal Carolinas is going to get it here shortly. Charlotte will get it as well.
I'm actually traveling to Wilmington this week, so I'm like, I'll just catch the storm in both places here.
Right. Just follow the storm.
Why not?
When was Lakewood Ranch developed? I think it was just being developed the last time I visited Sarasota. Do you know offhand around how old that community is?
I mean, they started in the 90s. Our first community here really was in the early 90s. SMRs really kind of developed their marketing plan in the early 2000s, but it was always designed to be this master planned community. And so we have 13 villages opening this year into next. We had 8 villages. We call them villages here. They're communities. We had 8 communities open last year. Like I said, I moved here 10 years ago, and, where my community was all farmland with a white picket fence. I used to run up and down Lakewood Ranch Boulevard. And so it was a 2-lane road at the time, and just really seeing the development and the growth over the years. And we were just ranked, like I said, #1 master plan community for the 6th year in a row. So really phenomenal things are happening here. It's a beautiful community. It's pristine. We have the waterside development now, and hosting our farmers market. It's actually #1 farmers market in the state of Florida. Really what you get here is like a community and a camaraderie from everyone. And really everyone just wants to make friends because we're from all over. And so, there's a great sense of community, but a lot of development is happening. So it's interesting to see where it'll go. And we're moving out east now because everything kind of in this main quadrant is built up. So yeah, it's not stopping anytime soon.
That's amazing. #1 master plan community in the country. That's really interesting. And yeah, it was literally, Lakewood Ranch was literally a ranch back in the day. I remember it was pasture land on that side of 75. So that's really amazing. And that's how long it's been since I've been there. It's been, I think it was probably the late 90s. This is the last time I visited. So I need to get down there for another visit and check out Lakewood Ranch too. It sounds amazing. I'd love to show you around. You have to come for a visit and give you the full tour. And, we're 20 miles from Siesta Key Beach. So we're not far, about 35 minutes, downtown and the beaches. And, like I said, we're 45 minutes to St. Pete. We're an hour to downtown Tampa, hour and a half to Orlando. So really we have a lot to offer within, with under a 2-hour, radius. I'll have to come visit you in Wilmington sometime too. Yes. Yeah. I'd love that. Yeah. We'll have to meet up over there. Any excuse to visit Wilmington, I'll take. Absolutely. So let's do it. Let's plan it. Britt, how can listeners learn more about you and your company and connect with you? What are the best ways? Yeah, so I'm on Instagram as the Lakewood Ranch Realtor. You can probably find me there. Facebook, you can just search my name. And then we're trying to push, our newest launch for Wilmington. So we're, website is Selling the Carolina Coast.
.com. So really that's kind of our next little launch baby that we're nurturing and really excited about it with my partners. Still running business here, but just at that point in my career where it kind of self-runs itself a little bit more. I'm an 80-20 listing agent to buy side and mostly sphere and referral base at this point. So going and launching a new market, like I said, it seems like a perfect time while things are, but you guys are still hot in North Carolina. So that was part of our marketing strategy too, is you guys are still seeing multiple offers. Your days on market are a third of our days on market. Your inventory is a third of our inventory, at least in like the Wilmington area. So we're trying to push our new launch. So we're selling the Carolina coast. You can find me on Instagram as the Lakewood Ranch Realtor, and I'm always happy to chat with anybody. Everyone knows this about me. I'm a very collaborative agent. I love just like talking and talking real estate and doing deals and helping wherever I can.
You showed that by accepting my invitation to join this podcast, which I'm extremely grateful for. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Britt, this has been a great conversation, and I really appreciate it again. And I'll have links, of course, in the description for this episode, and we'll tag you both on Lakewood Ranch Realtor and Selling the Carolinas Coast on social media. So, Britt, best wishes to you and your team and your friends and family in Florida this week. And thanks again so much for joining the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. We'll talk soon.